Dantastic.
We haven't started yet. We hear a lot of cheers already in the back.
Right, that's awesome.
Hey, it's all because of this man, Dantastic. And obviously we have lots of audience today. Another round, yeah! Love this. So anybody who's watching this episode, please help us do a sound check as well to look at how everything sounds so far. We'll hope to give you, again, another great representation. And today, extra Dantastic, I have Dan Hill with me today.
It's good to meet you guys. Good to be here.
Great. So Dan, I know you and I had a few chats just to see how this episode is going to go. And I think that you have a very unique background, as I've always talked to you about.
Thanks, Gary.
Love it. Yeah,
Welcome
so I'm very interested talking to you. I think obviously, I think that you and I have known each other for almost a year now. Actually,
Yeah.
in July. So you have a very unique background. I'd like to explore a bit more further. So if you don't mind, I want to dive into. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess who I am goes beyond recruiting. So, I've been in the US now for about 5 years, from the UK, not from Australia, as most people think.
At Chick-fil-A, they picked up the
Yeah.
drive-through counter.
Yeah, absolutely. My accent has changed, I guess. But married, 3 kids, twin daughters, and a newborn son. Or I guess 5 months old now, so not so newborn. But I've been in recruiting now for about 5 years. Started actually with a firm back in the UK, very small niche recruiting company, focusing on SAP recruitment at that point. So learned a lot about the fundamentals there.
Recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely, and started to learn a bit more about technology as well, because I didn't come from a technology background before that. Moved over here at that point. My wife's from Indiana, so moved over to the US.
I didn't know that. I thought she was from Chicago for some reason.
Yeah, so Chicago, it's right on the state line.
State line, okay.
Yep, exactly. So she's from Indiana, but I then joined a company called Blue Wolf in Chicago at the time when we opened the new office there. Obviously a big name in Salesforce, but I was on the staffing arm there of the business. Started my recruiting life in the US after doing a 2-hour commute each way every single day.
That's a commitment there. I think most people have lived up that area are watching right now. You know, that Illinois, Chicago, Michigan, obviously Wisconsin beyond that point. It's quite a winter up there, especially.
It is, but they know how to deal with the snow. So I think very rarely did I ever have any trouble actually getting into the city, even with that length of a commute. But yeah, I worked there for a while, really focusing on technology recruiting as a whole. I learned a lot about the fundamentals of software engineering, network engineering, really every aspect of technology there, and then moved to Atlanta with the company to open an Atlanta office. So I continued there and then went full cycle, moved back to a niche recruiting firm here at IT Works last June now. So yeah, we're approaching a year, focusing exclusively on the Salesforce market, which I was doing before as well.
I think we're gonna go through the transition, especially from the Salesforce specific piece. I think I want to tie that back into because you went to school, especially college, back in the UK.
Yep.
And then, how long did you work for in the professional world before you came to the US?
Really, probably only around 6 months in reality. There were 2 years between when I finished college and came over to the US, but I was doing a lot of the traveling, the backpacking around Thailand, Cambodia, when I lived in Sevilla, Spain for 6 months. So I would say my actual professional career started 6 months before I moved out to the US at that point. So luckily I got all of that exciting stuff out of the way before my daughters arrived.
That's fantastic. Especially, I want to talk a little bit about the cultural perspective because in the US, I think in my career, I've trained recruiters in different parts of the country within the US or the North America continent. The cultural aspect, because how was your transition like to be recruiting in the US and talk talking to the American population.
Yep.
Especially in a very specific area, technical, Salesforce with Blue Wolf and such. Can you walk us through what that journey was like?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because most of my professional life I've been in the US. It's almost difficult to compare the professional cultures. I mean, looking at recruiting in the UK compared to recruiting in the US. So it's interesting that I'm getting a lot of insights from the British guys who work for IT Works on that side of things. But when I came over here, I'd been visiting the US and traveling to the US for a few years before I moved here in 2012. But I think most of the cultural things there were just around the communication style. I've always maintained a fairly direct communication style that I think most people who I've worked with have really appreciated. I always think everyone knows what they're getting from me at that point, and that's one thing that I've learned a lot about that when you're working with different people from different areas of the country. Even when I was up in Chicago, it wasn't as direct as when I'm working with clients and candidates in New York. But coming down to Atlanta now, it's even less direct down here a lot of the time than it can be up in Chicago.
Can you help us decode the less direct? What did you have to do in order to be less direct? Even what's the motivational purpose behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, it's just it's having a bit of a softer approach to communication. And I've tried not to adapt too much because I don't want to soften my communication to a point where I'm not getting my point across clearly.
Not as effective.
Exactly. I went on a leadership conference once, and that was one thing I was working on there, was trying to be a little bit less, I guess, less direct, actually trying to be a bit, have a softer approach. But when I was doing role plays in that exercise, I was suddenly far too fluffy. And honestly, the people that I was speaking with, they were struggling at that point to find out, whoa, what is the point you're trying to make here? So I prefer to have that clear, concise, direct communication style where everyone who works with me knows what they're getting and what I'm trying to say from the outset.
Since your transition to IT Works, because I noticed that there was a lot of growth and development in you as well, either from more candidate-based environment where you came from before, which most of us came from a recruitment candidate-based background first, or account management to a degree, now the entire full 360. What do you think that have you, based on the resources here provided to you, where have you seen yourself that's evolved?
Yeah.
Something that you never thought of you would evolve into. What's that like?
Yeah, absolutely. So over here we've got two different areas. I'm obviously focusing on working with my clients now, but also working with my candidates and the local candidates in the New York market as well. So prior to moving to IT Works, I was primarily focusing on just really building those relationships with the candidates that I was working with. Now, when I was working in general IT, it's more difficult to build those relationships with the entire market. So when I was working with candidates on specific opportunities, I really did build relationships with them. And there are candidates who I worked with back in 2012 who still message me now, and I still know what's going on with their personal life and their families as well. So that was always something that I really wanted to do in my career, and now coming here to IT Works, that's one thing that's developed hugely because of the opportunity to focus on Salesforce and focus on the New York market. I've actually been able to take the time to really learn about the candidates that I'm working with from both the professional and the personal perspectives as well. In terms on the client side, that's in my previous life and the previous companies I was working with, I did speak with clients. I had conversations mainly around actually understanding their technical requirements. I was the guy who got on the phone and really asked the technical questions, really made sure I understand exactly what they were looking for before jumping into a search. But right now, it's great that I'm actually able to build those relationships with my clients as well, and really understand what they're looking for and what their goals are within the organization and potentially outside the organization as well.
And really build that relationship from the get-go, pretty much.
Yeah,
versus being handed out from somebody else, get that to you, and for you to almost trying to find a brand or find a place for yourself to, from taking a job path, from finding out what the client's looking for. so on and so forth. What has building relationships been like for you? Because obviously that from the cultural differences, also from moving around the country a little bit, from Chicago or Indiana down to Atlanta. What has that journey been like for you in your professional world?
Yeah, and I think that's one thing. If I'm talking about myself, I think that's one of my strengths most of the time. I don't think I always have, every time I'm speaking with anyone, I really try and have that genuine interest, and I've always had that in the candidates that I've worked with, in friends, in my personal life as well. I've had that genuine interest, but it's great as I've been learning more over the years about technology. I've developed a bit of an interest and passion in software development, even if I'm not a software developer. And then moving into Salesforce now, it's everyone on the team here knows that's one area that I'm passionate about. I will always learn about what's going on in the market, what the latest trends are, and I think that's one thing that I carry through to my conversations with my candidates, with my clients as well. I'm always excited to actually learn about what they've done and the challenges and how they have overcome them. So I think that's been something that I've really enjoyed doing, building those relationships.
I think we can tell. I think everybody watching this can tell the excitement that you can hear from Dan's voice. I kept smiling because this is the first time I've ever heard him actually spoke something that very complimentary of himself. He's always talking about others, especially people around him, and then have that very nurturing approach on everything that you do. And I think the relationship piece is very natural things to you. Why was it important to you, in your own point of view, not from anybody teaching you about how recruitment really should be, what business environment should be like?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can be genuine, like just a genuine individual, and have those. You can't have real relationships with people unless you are excited about what they have to say and about what they've done, and have a real interest in what they've done. And I mean, moving outside of the staffing world, the recruiting world, I think that's important. That's been important throughout my whole life. Friendships, family. I mean, I even go back to childhood, essentially. And there was one year at school where I went to 3 different schools in 3 different cities. When I started a brand new school in September, started another brand new school in January, and started another brand new school in April. And it was a case of, even at that point, you have to build relationships quickly if you're going to enjoy yourself and keep moving your way through life. So,
something that formed you to be helped you to become much more adaptable than most.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that ability to be adaptable it's important. It's important in life. It's important in recruiting as well. We have to adapt to our searches, but you never know what's going to come up. You never know when you're going to suddenly go from being married to married with kids. It's important to have that adaptability. Yeah.
Plus 3.
Yeah, exactly.
How old is Camden now?
Camden is 5 months old. Yeah, so 5.5 months old now. It goes quickly. So my wife just messaged me today. It sounds like he's ready to start crawling. He's getting up onto his knees now.
Oh goodness.
Yep. So that's exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Not a terrifying 12 months. What's going to happen, and then start running pretty soon.
Yep. Exactly.
Oh goodness. So talk a little bit about your market. You mentioned about Salesforce. Mm-hmm. You mentioned about New York. So what, for anybody watching out there to get to know you more from what you do, can you tell us a little bit more about your market, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I specialize in providing Salesforce experts to my clients across New York. And that's not just New York City, that's the entire state. So I'm working with clients right now in Syracuse, I'm working with clients in Albany, I'm working with clients up in Buffalo and Rochester as well. Obviously, the bulk of my clients are in New York City. It's a very concentrated area, but it's a market that I'm really, really excited about because there is so much talent there. It's a market where every individual who goes into a company has worked with another very cool company. It's essentially, in the US, you've got Silicon Valley, but you've got New York as well. I've worked with candidates who those are the only areas they want to move to in the whole of the US because those are two of the big areas for technical advancement, and the big events as well within Salesforce. I think it's an easy place to really build your network and learn as well. So very, very exciting market, very competitive market as well. I think every client I work with knows they have a lot of competition for the top talent, but I think that's great for the talent there as well, because they're being taken care of by the companies in the area.
Yeah, I think fundamentally it's a very, like you said, very competitive market, very diverse market. I think that when most people think of New York City, people think of the state of New York, we come with some expectations for Silicon Valley as well. So what are the values that you're trying to bring of the Dantastic brand? What are the values, impression you want to leave with the candidate clients that have ever worked with you in any capacity?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's interesting because I think that's one thing that stood out to me when I joined IT Works last year as well, is that the values of IT Works are very much in line with my values as well. So I've always tried to be completely committed to my work. If anyone looks at my LinkedIn profile and looks at the recommendations, they'll probably see the word committed multiple times from former managers and former candidates and clients that I've worked with. I've always been a really collaborative individual as well. There are people that I've worked with throughout my career now. I was just telling Andrew, who focuses on the New England market here today, that I've worked with and mentored a lot of people in my career so far who have gone on to manage offices and manage territories and really do a lot of good in the industry as well, and they've taught me a lot as well.
And that's a hard thing to do, to be collaborative. I think in staffing especially, you can probably say in the RPO or in a MSP, VMS capacity, maybe a lot of collaboration. I think that's an opportunity that most staffing professionals don't really have.
Yeah, and I think one thing that something that's been a constant throughout my recruiting career so far has been, I know there are environments out there where, in the agency world, there are agencies where recruiters have ownership over individuals, and they're not necessarily encouraged to share their knowledge, share their information. Every recruiting environment that I've worked in has been the opposite. Yeah, it's been a case of everyone's working together to get the best candidate for the client. And I think that just there naturally, it's been a collaborative environment that I've worked in. Anyway, and I've always tried to make sure I'm open to learning as well. When I came here to IT Works, I tried to completely, strip back my knowledge in terms of I understand I've got this knowledge right now, but I want to come in like I haven't been in staffing before, so that I could really learn everything as quickly as possible.
You're always so humble, and I love the fact that you're always so committed of what you do, and then and also you're very extremely consistent about things. I think that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, consistency. I think consistency takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of, I don't want to say commitment again, but if you it's very easy for someone to try and make a change in their life or try and make a change in their process, and they'll do it once or they'll do it twice, but for something to really become a habit, essentially it has to be repeated over and over and over again, and that takes hard work. That takes real focus to actually make it. Takes a lot of you have to be very deliberate in the way you're doing things. So I think that's why it's difficult to be consistent, because you can be consistently doing what you're not supposed to be doing, but if you're going to be making the changes, you need to improve yourself. You need to develop good habits, and it takes a lot of deliberate thinking to do that.
Especially really having a sense of, in this very entrepreneur, very much owning your business mentality. I think that you have to be able to be consistent and continuous doing what you're looking to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in order to gain that credibility of your brand recognition per se.
Absolutely, and credibility is everything. I mean, that you go back there to building relationships and being genuine with everyone that you're working with, and as I mentioned, I've got individuals who I've worked with for years and years and years, and they know that I genuinely have their best interests at heart. They know I'm not going to put them into an opportunity that is not right for them and not right for their career. And I think and I believe that has helped me build credibility as well with those individuals. Obviously, you need to have the market knowledge and the understanding of the actual technology that you're staffing for in an agency world to have the credibility, but you also need to have that genuine interest and build those relationships as well.
Absolutely. Why do you think that? This is probably more of a personal question. What has this opportunity at IT Works been a good choice for you?
I mean, it's 100% been a very good choice for me, and yeah, no, absolutely, and it's allowed me. Previously, I had some ownership over what I was doing. I had ownership over the recruiting aspect. So I was always working with multiple different individuals who were bringing in the business. Essentially, they were building the relationships with their clients, and they were understanding the client needs. And then at that point, it was passed along to me, and I was really focusing on the candidate side of things. I think coming in here now, it's being able to focus on the 360 relationship there, really understanding myself, the client, the hiring manager, the company, and the best candidates for them. I'm able to actually provide the best solution at that point, because I can understand what is going to make them tick. When a candidate asks me to tell them about the company and tell them about the manager, I can actually do that. So that's been really, really important to me. It really has allowed me to really grow my own business. But it's allowed me to, it's funny because I've been in leadership roles before, but I almost have more freedom. I feel like I've got more freedom right now to lead, even though I'm not in an official leadership capacity. I've got the ability to mentor and ask questions to my teammates, but understanding at the same time that I'm learning from them.
That sounds extremely liberating.
Yeah, no, it is. It definitely has been. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah. Very cool. With that being said, I have this question that I've been meaning to ask you for quite some time, because
Okay.
you have a very different upbringing to shape you to who you are today. What have some of the influential people in your life that have contributed more or less into the Dantastic brand that we see today?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm going to be completely cliched with some of it. No, absolutely. I mean, my dad's always been a very hardworking person.
Mr. Hill.
Yeah, Mr. Hill. He did not go to university back in the UK in probably the 70s, let's say, when he finished high school.
He's still very young. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But 70s, he finished high school at 16, went straight into the working world. It wasn't normal to go into university for everyone then, and he didn't come from a well-off background, and he really worked his way up. He's still doing very well in customer service complaints with big banks and big four consulting companies now. So his drive and his ability to really engage people, that's been a big factor for me. I think moving forward there from my childhood and moving up to university, I then started working on a summer camp. During the summers when I was at university, I flew over to the US, worked on a summer camp in upstate New York, near the Albany area. So familiarizing myself with my market from that time.
In a future life.
Absolutely, and the director of the camp there, a guy called Scott Rawls, he shaped me as well. Really shaped the way that I build relationships with people, and that I really think about things, and I'm deliberate about things as well. It's interesting to think about it when you're in a completely different environment.
In different capacity too.
Absolutely, but I know he won an award this year for camping nationwide, and I think everyone who has gone to that camp as well really has developed under him as well. So he's been a big factor in my life.
Special shout out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anything else, any other events that have happened that have you found that have been a valuable experience to your success?
I think my life has been It's been a series of events. I mean, I went to university for something completely different. My degree is in sport and exercise science.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a big passion for sport when I was younger, and that was probably the route that I was going to get into sport. Right before I started university, tore my ACL in my knee. So
How many times so far?
3 surgeries on this knee.
Oh goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. I probably need more, but kind of just retired from soccer at this point instead. So that was a big event for me as well. I went to university my first year with a knee brace on, in a sporting course essentially. So I had to get through a few things there. When I was at university, I had to work, but I enjoyed to work as well. My final year at university, I was doing 40 hours a week, working on top of doing my dissertation for university, and then I think from there I'm a planner, but at the same time I have gone with the flow in life a lot as well.
Can always plan for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And going to live in Spain, that was not something that I planned to do in my life, but I went over there and I managed to get myself a job within a couple of hours of landing in Spain, in a country where it's 33% unemployment. I just focused on just getting that done immediately. So it's been a lot of things through my life that I think have developed me and character at that point.
That's very cool. So with anybody that, we're in the profession that we're in right now, especially having the opportunity to work the entire full 360 within a very niche market space.
Yep.
For anybody who's aspiring out there to potentially looking at an opportunity here or become a staffing professional, what words of wisdom do you have for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're going to be in staffing, if you're going to be a successful recruiter, it really starts before you go into the industry. I think I've told people before, the most important thing you need coming into recruiting is work ethic. It is the desire to work hard and the desire to be recognized and the desire to be the best, essentially. It's important to be humble as well. You're not always going to be the best, but I think one thing I've done through my life in every job I've been in, when I was at school as well, I always tried my hardest to be the best I could be and try and compete with every other person. So I think that's important there, is to have that right frame of mind around it is a lot of hard work. You're going to be working very hard for your clients and for your candidates, but it's a very rewarding business as well, where you really can see the results.
And sometimes when you do see the result, it translates nicely in the paycheck.
Absolutely.
Obviously, and that's one of the things that make recruitment such an exciting, partially non-dying industry. Obviously, the human element that cannot be automated.
100%. Twin daughters, and a young son, and my wife.
College tuition.
You need to be able to make some money as
Future
well.
mortgage.
So that's very important.
Yeah, I think the list goes on. In
Yes.
This. Yeah. So on that note, so for everybody who's watching out there, if they want to know more about the Dantastic brand, what Daniel's brand stand for, what would you like to tell them? What they don't know about that's special about you and your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. That's not a question that I was prepared for. I mean, I think it's similar to what we said. I've always been very hardworking. I work hard for everyone that I build the relationships with, and obviously when I'm building relationships with people, I'm trying to be as genuine as possible. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to want to understand what makes them tick as well. I've always been a bit of a problem solver. The guys here know that if I can't do something, or if there's a problem with the new user interface on LinkedIn, for example, I'm going to try and work out a workaround.
Thanks, LinkedIn.
Absolutely. I'm going to try and come up with a workaround. And typically I'll make something work. So I think that's a big thing with my brand. Present me with a problem, and I'm going to do everything I can to find a solution, and the right solution as well.
Well, thank you, Dan. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Yeah,
Kyan.
I love your mindset and mentality, and I think that obviously I know before you come in, these people have your back, and I think today we know that you have our back, and then it's a great feeling to be.
Awesome.
Thank you for the camaraderie. Thank you for your consistency. Thank you for being fantastic.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions for us, hashtag Coffee with Kyan, or leave a comment for us so we can get back to you in the shape or fashion that you prefer. And obviously, the best way to contact Dan.Hill at itwasred.com, 678-291-0081. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.